Chapter 1. Arrival in the New World. The cold wind howled through the towering buildings of New York City as young Michael O'Connor stepped off the ship. The year was 1892, and he was just one of thousands arriving at Ellis Island in search of the American dream. His heart pounded as he clutched the small bag containing all his belongings, an old Bible, a tattered photograph of his mother, and a few coins saved from his journey across the Atlantic. The immigration officer at Ellis Island barely looked up as he asked, "Name?" "O'Connor. Michael O'Connor." "Country of origin?" "Ireland, sir." The officer stamped his papers and waved him through. Just like that, Michael was an American. Or, at least, he was allowed to stay. He had no idea what the future held, but he knew one thing: he would do whatever it took to survive in this new land. Chapter 2. The Factory's Flames. New York City was a city of endless possibilities, but it was also a city of brutal hardships. Michael quickly found work at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, a garment factory known for its harsh conditions. Long hours, poor pay, and the ever-present risk of accidents made every day a battle. Among his co-workers was a girl named Sarah Bernstein, a Jewish immigrant from Russia. Despite their different backgrounds, they shared the same dream: to escape poverty and build a better future. "This isn't what I imagined America would be," Michael admitted one evening as they walked home from the factory. Sarah sighed. "It never is. But we have no choice but to keep going." Then, on March 25, 1911, disaster struck. A fire broke out in the factory, trapping hundreds of workers inside. The exits were locked, and panic spread like wildfire. Michael fought through the smoke, searching for Sarah. He found her near a window, coughing and barely conscious. "Come on. We have to jump," he shouted. Sarah shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I can't." Michael grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the window ledge. Together, they leaped. Chapter 3. The Great War and Its Price. Michael survived the fire, but not without scars, both physical and emotional. Sarah was not as lucky. She died 2 days later in the hospital, leaving Michael devastated. Seeking a fresh start, he enlisted in the U.S. Army when America entered World War I in 1917. He was sent to the trenches of France, where the reality of war was far worse than he had imagined. In the mud and blood of no man's land, Michael met Corporal James Carter, a black soldier from Alabama. The two became unlikely friends, sharing stories of their past lives in America and their dreams for the future. "This country treats us like we don't belong," James said one night. "But here we are, fighting for it anyway." Michael nodded. Maybe that's what being American really means. Fighting for something, even when it doesn't love you back. The war ended in 1918, and Michael returned home, only to find that America had changed. The economy was booming, but so was inequality. Chapter 4. The Great Depression. By 1929, the Roaring Twenties had come to a crashing halt. The stock market collapse left millions unemployed, including Michael. He wandered the streets, searching for work, watching as once proud businessmen stood in soup lines. One day, he met an old friend, James Carter, who had also fallen on hard times. "I fought for this country," James said bitterly. "And now it's forgotten me." Michael clenched his fists. "Maybe it's time we remind it." Together, they joined a protest demanding jobs and fair wages. Police broke up the demonstration with batons and tear gas. Michael was beaten, arrested, and thrown into a cell. But as he sat in the darkness, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Chapter 5. A New Dawn. By 1941, America was at war again. This time, Michael was too old to fight, but he watched as a new generation took up the mantle. His own son, Daniel, enlisted after Pearl Harbor. As Daniel sailed off to Europe, Michael whispered, "Come back safe, son." The war ended in 1945 with America victorious. But the fight for justice at home continued. James Carter became a leader in the civil rights movement, and Michael supported him every step of the way. By the time the 1960s arrived, Michael was an old man. He watched on television as Martin Luther King Jr. marched on Washington, as Americans landed on the moon, and as a new generation fought for their rights. One evening, as he sat on his porch, he smiled. The America he had arrived in so many years ago was not perfect. It never had been. But it was always changing, always growing. And that, he realized, was the true American dream.